Welcome to Caring for Holiday Plants. My name is Terrell Davis, and I am Ag Agent here in Pike County for the University of Arkansas Systems Division of Ag Cooperative Extension Service. As we go through today, we'll just kind of talk about some of the general rules for caring for holiday plants. So just some general tips. Care for an indoor plant and care for an outdoor plant are quite a bit different. So even though you may be great at outdoor plants, but you don't have a lot of experience with indoor plants, just realize that there will be some things different. Outdoor plants really rely upon the environment, just the natural way things go with sunlight and temperature and water, and usually do really well with that. We may have to supplement that every once in a while, but for the most part, they do really well. Whereas indoor plants really are subject to how good of a waterer and temperature and all those things that we do. So neglect can have some serious consequences for indoor plants. So consider that they are at your mercy as far as watering and what you keep the temperature on, how much sunlight they get. So we'll talk about all those things as we go through this slide set today. Consider any kind of transplant stress that the plants may suffer. If you get the plants, put them in the car, stop at the grocery store on your way home, you know that it's going to get very hot in there. And that quick change in temperature can really stress out a plant. If you forget them overnight in the trunk, right, that can definitely stress them out. So be considerate of that. You may want to cover up certain plants such as poinsettias who are very light sensitive, and consider that. Make sure that they're in the vehicle sturdy, that they don't fall over and break. So all those things need to be considerations, and remember that as you're hauling your plants. Store in a cool room with bright indirect light. And your plant may not be able to go directly where you want it. You may need to put it in a cool room for a couple of days before you set it out, or as a centerpiece, or as a focal point in the living room, what have you, where it might be a little bit warmer. So acclimate it to the environment that it's going to be in, and do not overwater. That is the most common problem that we see, is people overwatering plants. So basically what you want to do is to kind of dry out between waterings. You want to water thoroughly. Make sure that it runs out the bottom of the plant. So set it in a sink or a bathtub or whatever. Water it thoroughly. Let it drain before you put it back in its display location. Just to talk about some specifics. So poinsettias are a #1 holiday plant that we have for the Christmas holidays. They're not what they used to be. They have a lot of colors and a lot of varieties. Typically poinsettias were red with a flat bract, and today we have all kinds of different colors. We have some with curls, some that are still flat, some that are variegated. So you have a lot of options there that you used to not have. So whatever tickles your fancy, that's what you need to go for. A lot of people have the idea that they're going to have an investment in poinsettias, and that they've heard all these stories of people who might have grew them throughout the year, and they were huge the next year, and they were able to, if you will, rebloom, even though we're not really talking about the bloom, we're talking about the bract. It's very difficult for that to happen. It's a lot of work, and if you're dedicated to it, power on. If not, enjoy their beauty. They last for a lot longer than they used to. Enjoy their beauty. They should last you throughout the season and family coming in. And then when they're spent, it's probably just a good time to put them into the composter and let them serve another purpose. The color portion is referred to as a bract, so they don't truly have a flower, if you will. The little flower is in the middle of all those bracts. Room temperature is important for poinsettias. So as we have listed here, 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit is ideal. Anything below 60 or higher than 75 really isn't ideal for these plants. So consider that. And I even put that in transport. If you're a person that leaves the heater on as you're going through the road and you've really got it cranked up, that's going to be a lot of shock to that plant. So consider that. And the warmer the environment, the faster the water is going to evaporate, and you're going to have to keep an eye on watering. So really that 65 to 70 is what we want. And overwatering is the most common problem for poinsettias. They don't like wet feet. You'll start to see rot take place in the poinsettias. So really what we need to do is just touch the soil, whether you're determining whether you should add more water or not. If the top layer is dry, then go ahead and water it thoroughly, let the water run out the bottom, and let it drain completely before you put it back in a decorative basket or wherever you're displaying it, okay? Christmas cactus has become very popular. It's a little bit different of a plant than we normally have for holiday plants. They can be very, very pretty. So here's some things that we need to consider with Christmas cactus. One, that there are several colors now available. So if you don't want to use traditional reds or pinks, then you might find a white or something that you like a little better. They do require a lot of bright light. However, that doesn't need to be direct light. They like short days and night temperatures between 55 and 65. Christmas cactus really does well in a lot of business building situations because you probably turn the heater down when you leave for the day. You turn all the lights off, and so they may have a little bit shorter day than you might have in your residential situation. But just remember that these are the things that they like to set buds. And after they do set buds, then you might be able to place them in a more conducive display setting. They do best when they are pot bound, so don't replant them all the time. About every 3 years is probably our ideal situation for replanting Christmas cactuses. They enjoy full sun in the winter months, but they prefer a shady area throughout the other months of the year, especially from about April to September. They really want a little bit of shade. That's their natural environment. So that's kind of what they desire. We don't really change their natural desires just because we import them. They do require a resting period from mid-September to the 1st of November. So during that time, we really need to make sure that we don't waterlog them. So you probably don't have to water them very much at all during that time. To kind of take them out of that full sunlight, let them rest a little bit. They'll set their buds, and after they set their buds, you can put them back in a sunny, bright location. Okay. Less water during October through March, and then you can increase your watering from April to September because they are warmer months and water will evaporate a little more rapidly. Amaryllis is a growing plant that we start to see. So most of the time you'll see starter kits that are starting from bulbs. You may go to a garden center and have one already started. So the preferred method is to grow from the bulb because you really get to reap the benefits of the amaryllis and make sure that you don't miss any bloom time. But if you do buy a plant, I suggest that you don't buy a plant that has a lot of blooms on it. You know, that it's still got several buds that are left to go, so that you really get to enjoy that. And if you get one that's kind of spent, or you find it on clearance because it's almost spent, that's okay, because it's going to bloom next year, and it's really easy to get it to rebloom. So blooming can last for 4 to 6 weeks, and there are 4 to 6 blooms on each stem. Typically, we find them in pairs of 3 or 4. So there's several blooms there that we get to enjoy. And like I said, they are really easy to rebloom every year. So just keep your bulbs and be ready for them to bloom the next year. When you plant your bulb, make sure that you expose about half of it above the soil. Do not cover these bulbs in soil. We can even find them in places where really they're not in soil at all. They're just kind of suspended above a water or something. You can even find those. But I do suggest that you put them in soil, but only plant about half of it. And then put it in a sunny location after the growth begins. He kind of wants to chill out for a little bit so that you start to see some vegetation. See some vegetation, go ahead and put it in sunlight and keep the soil moist. And then turn it frequently, kind of consider it an egg, I guess you could say, to avoid leaning. We want a very straight amaryllis. So to keep it from leaning one way or to the other, make sure that you turn it. I've turned it a little bit every day if you've got it in a sunny location, or if you start to see it bend, go ahead and that's the time to turn it. The room temperature needs to stay around 70, 75 degrees, so a little bit warmer than that poinsettia during the vegetative growth period. After it starts to bloom, you can lower that temperature to about the same thing as that poinsettia was, about 65 to 70. Some other things to consider with amaryllis. So from bulb to bloom should take about 4 to 6 weeks. And then you've got another 4 to 6 weeks of blooming, okay? So after the blooms have started to fade, that's the time that we want to cut the flower stalk, but not the leaves. Okay, the leaves are still gathering nutrients and taking them back to the bulb, and we don't want to get rid of those yet. So make sure you just cut the flower stalk, but we want to get rid of that, put it in the compost. And you may wish during the spring and summer months to put it in the ground and then bring it out around Labor Day and keep it in the house and go through that process we talked about earlier of, letting it kind of have a rest period. And then when you see that flower stalk shoot out, to go ahead and put it in a sunny location and to not water it just a whole lot. You will have offset bulbs. This is a reproducing bulb. So you'll have offset bulbs. Remove those and start another container with those. And maybe something you give as a gift or just to have more of them for yourself to enjoy. To extend blooming, kind of like, say, gladiolas, it's going to be one of those situations where you plant your bulbs at different times, stagger that planting out, and that way you extend the blooming season of your amaryllis. Just a few words on Christmas trees, because that's another very popular plant that we have. We may not think about it as holiday plants a lot. So I started out with red cedar. This is one that probably isn't as popular, except for us folks out in the country that like to just go out and find one and cut our own and drag it back to the house. And there's plenty of red cedars. They don't really have the shape that maybe a commercially produced pine might have. But it is a good location, a good addition, to the home for Christmas. Even if we don't use it for a Christmas tree, we might use it for a wreath. So those same things kind of apply to this. So it is aromatic, and it is readily available in most places in Arkansas. So go cut you one down and bring it back to the house. Remember that it's not a conifer because it doesn't have a cone. It has berries, and birds and small animals really like those berries. It does have a prickly scale-like leaf. It doesn't have a needle, but they will dry out quickly, quicker than a pine needle will dry out. So consider that. Ensure that the tree stand has water at all times. If you let it run out, you're going to need to cut off the bottom again and put water back in. So we really don't want water to ever run out, whether it's a cedar or a pine, whatever. Cut an inch from the base and stick it directly into the water that's in the stand. You can expect about 2 weeks with a cedar before it's probably dry and becomes a burning hazard. With pines, they last a little longer. We're looking for that iconic conical shape. And we don't want a lot of gaps, right? So that's kind of where the fake trees came in, because you could really cover up some gaps with those. But today we have a lot of really good commercially produced pine trees that we can use. I would suggest that you examine the tree for insects before placing it in your home, just so that you don't add new pests to your home. But it's also important that you look for any invasive pests so they don't get in your landscape. So very important that you look them over and make sure that you don't see any damage to the tree or what have you. It's a great time to do that while it's still in the Christmas tree farm and you don't bring it home or the parking lot or whatever. But if you get it home and you haven't done that, I suggest that you do that. And again, cut an inch off the base and stick it directly into the water that's in the stand. And never let it go dry. But pines will hold up much longer than cedars inside your home, so it's a really good option that will probably last all of your holiday season. Just a little bit different topic here, but here's a Christmas tree preservative recipe. So it's 1/4 of a cup of horticulture iron. As for Green Guard, when you go to the garden center or wherever you're going to buy all this stuff, you need a gallon of hot water, hot because it needs to be able to dissolve all the things that we're putting in. Because the next thing is 2 cups of light corn syrup. So it's going to need a little bit of that heat to dissolve and go into our solution. And then 4 teaspoons of chlorinated house bleach. Okay, so you're going to mix all this together. The Green Guard is not going to dissolve all the way. You're going to still see some particles there. They're going to settle out to the bottom, and that's okay. And then pour this in the stand, and then put your tree in that stand. And again, we don't let it run out of water. So always make sure that there's some liquid in there. From this point, you can add this again if you want to, or just add this at the beginning and refill with plain water as you go. So anyway, we're glad that you were able to join us. Hope this helped a little bit. If you have any more questions, feel free to call us 870-285-2161 or visit us at uaex.edu/pike. Thanks.